Yeah, Judge Engoron has said he will file it to the docket by the end of this month. I'm reminded Suzanne Craig, who joins us now, was in the courtroom of something Donald Trump wrote in The Art of the Deal, always spend other people's money. Tell me about what it was like in that courtroom today so far.
Right. So, we started out and we got Team Trump's closing arguments right at the start this morning, and they're still going on. And at the beginning, we've gone through, I think, and I want to sort of go through some of their arguments and then talk about two that I think are particularly unique and I think go to the heart of this case. But they started out just with some of the greatest hits. They say that he is a real estate genius and that Donald Trump knew that the banks would be doing their own due diligence. And then we went to his financial statements. And these are the statements that are at the heart of this case. They were submitted to the banks, and the Attorney General is saying that they were fraudulent. And their Team Trump is saying the financial statements, in fact, had disclaimers on them, and they say they're like a buyer beware notice on them, that anybody using them would know that they need to do their own due diligence. And then we went to the third point, that Trump had professionals. He relied on professional advice. So they sort of went through all these things, real estate valuations, they're art, not science. And then I think there was two, though, important arguments that haven't been as discussed to date that I want to sort of talk about. And one was right at the top. Chris Kise, who is a lawyer for Donald Trump, he said that, and this is really an argument directed right at the appeals court, that most of the behavior here is outside of the statute of limitations. After we finish here today, there's going to be some sort of verdict, and there's going to be a fine, and then it will go and be fought in the appeals court. And they are very much, today we saw Team Trump laying the groundwork for that. And then the second thing that came up, and it was kind of, I think the word of the morning, was unrebutted. And Chris Kise, representing Donald Trump, he kept saying a lot of the evidence was unrebutted, and that the Attorney General never came back with anything to say, well, hey, that's, the evidence that Team Trump got in. They never came back and they never rebutted it. And the judge actually interjected at one point and said, he doesn't have to accept unrebutted evidence if he doesn't find it credible. So there was some back and forth about that issue. And then the third thing that came up was the issue of disgorgement. What is going to be the final fine? And the Attorney General is now looking at $370 million. And there was a lot of wrangling about that and a lot of dispute from the Trump team about, that number and, that it's just crazy. It's delusional. So that's sort of where we're at right now. Yep.
Can you explain how she went from 250 to 370?
Right. They looked at, after the evidence, they said that there was more harm done, that the banks, or more essentially, they should have gotten more interest off of these loans than they did because Trump submitted these financial statements that were, overly optimistic, and he got preferential treatment. And then there's two other important, I think, or two pieces of it, one other component to that, which is that two of the loans are on properties that have since been sold, and because they're sort of fruit of the poisonous tree, that those that the profits, those properties have since been sold, and that the profits from those properties should just be disgorged completely. One is the old post office; it's a hotel in Washington, and the other one is a golf course here in New York, and that there should just be sheer disgorgement of those because he submitted fraudulent information in order to get those loans.